Let me not sing that. You know YouTube be wilding like that. Even on a hum, YouTube would call someone out on that. Wild behavior. But at this point, it is to be expected. Let me see here. This is going to be an interesting one for sure. I'll definitely say that. Also, let's see how this goes. I'm interested in seeing what we get here. Don't plan to stay long though, but this could be very, very interesting in how this goes. All right. Same old, same old. All right, I think we're good to go. Oh boy. All right. Let me open my usual stuff. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, what is up? What is good? What's going on, everybody? Hope you guys are enjoying your day. So, this is quite the interesting signing here, if I do say so myself. I'll definitely say I was not expecting this to be the case. First of all, Todd Monken, he wasn't on my list. I'm not going to lie. I did not really have him on my list. First of all, I didn't think he was leaving Georgia. I mean, after you win 2 straight national championships, you would assume the offensive coordinator isn't really going to go anywhere if he wants to keep up that success. Then again, when you're that successful, you would want to pursue a better job. So I guess it does make sense. Now, of course, when it came to offensive coordinators, I had guys like Eric Bieniemy and Brian Leftwich on my list. I knew that the Ravens were pursuing other guys. They interviewed a lot of people. Looked like they also wanted to interview, the quarterback coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, which I was cool with. So, I mean, it looked like they were taking their time to truly assess what they wanted, and I was cool with that. I was fine with that. I was just interested in seeing where things were going to go when it came to picking a next offensive coordinator. I wasn't exactly sure when it was going to happen, but I did expect it to happen, right after the Super Bowl. I thought give it about a week and a half after the Super Bowl, and the Ravens would probably come to a decision because, it looked like they were also waiting to be able to interview guys like Bieniemy. So I was trying to see how this was going to go, but damn, it did not take them long. What was it, 48 hours? 48 hours after the Super Bowl, bam, they've got their new guy. And they went out and they signed Todd Monken to be the next offensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens. So I will say, this is quite the interesting signing. I wasn't personally expecting this to be the case, but when I looked into it, because initially when I made my reaction early on today, I didn't really know anything about how he specifically ran, how his success was, and how he looked statistic-wise in terms of what he did and what he accomplished. I knew he was the offensive coordinator for Georgia during those 2 national championships that happened. So I'm like, okay, he has success at the highest level in college. Makes sense. But what else does he bring to the table in terms of his scheme, in terms of his ability, in terms of his knowledge? I didn't really know much about that. And I didn't know the stats because I didn't know his coaching history. So I really wanted to look into that and discuss it here. Originally, I was going to make a video, but I more so like doing the live stream version because I can get to interact with some of you guys, and it gives me more time. Because in the video, you don't want to keep rambling on about the same, like a long topic where you're going to go into other aspects, which I will be going into. And based on the format I'm doing here, it feels like it'll take longer to do it in the video, as opposed to just making a live stream and getting it over with in like half an hour or something like that. So, Todd Monken is the new offensive coordinator for the Ravens, and my initial reaction to this was mixed feelings. I know he had success in college, but we know college ain't the pros. He's actually been an offensive coordinator in the NFL before, so he has a long, lengthy coaching history. So if we take a look at it, we'll actually see. Number one, in terms of his age, he is 57 years old, bit on the older side, which again is something we may not exactly look at as the best, but you prefer. We were. I don't. How do I say this? I don't want to say that we were trying to overlook older guys because Eric Bieniemy's 53, so there's not that much of a difference. But a lot of Ravens fans were hopeful that the next offensive coordinator would be more of a younger guy because of the belief that the next offensive coordinator could eventually take Harbaugh's job. That's what people wanted, but I doubt that was actually going to happen because any threat to Harbaugh's job was not going to be signed here for the most part. So yeah, so he's Todd Monken's 57 years old. He has a lengthy coaching history, and yeah, it's very interesting. And he has lengthy coach history. He has experience both in college and in the pros. Do you think he'll be able to transfer back to a pro style that will be able to help Lamar and the team develop? Absolutely. In fact, he kind of ran somewhat of a pro style offense in college. As an offensive coordinator, he ran more of a pro style offense in college. And he has experience running a pro style offense in the NFL as an offensive coordinator. So I don't think it'll be difficult. We're going to go into it with the stats, but this guy has experience as an offensive coordinator in the NFL and has had some good performances here as an offensive coordinator in terms of what he did in the NFL. So I don't think it's going to be a problem. One of the things I've heard about Todd Monken is his ability to adapt. His adaptability is very, very vital. He's able to adapt to whatever system he has to work under in order to run the most effective and most efficient system. The fact that he has both college and NFL experience should definitely help him out in this junction. We'll just have to see how it goes. Not to mention he's never had this talent at quarterback, and if you actually look at the quarterbacks he was working with prior to this, Lamar is going to easily be the best quarterback he's ever worked with. So this could definitely mean magic if it works out for the most part. But yeah, did Lamar pick the offensive coordinator? Lamar didn't directly pick the offensive coordinator. What happened is, I think this is shortly after Greg Roman, there was a report about this, but shortly after Greg Roman was relieved of his duties, the Ravens went to Lamar and got an inquiry about what some of the things he would like to see change in the offense. So they got everything Lamar would really want to look for in the offense in terms of involving the pass game. They took a mental note of that, kept that in the file, and used that to assess how they were going to get their next offensive coordinator. So, yeah, that's pretty much how we got to Todd Monken, at least in that aspect. So, before we kind of get into, I guess, more of himself in terms of his kind of personnel style, let's just take a look at his stats in terms of what he's accomplished as an offensive coordinator. What are you hoping for him to achieve with his tenure here in Baltimore? Like, what kind of plays are you hoping he issues? I don't have a specific variety that I'm looking for in terms of plays. I just want to see an improvement. It seems like he has an experience running a spread offense, which is exactly what I feel would best fit Lamar Jackson. So if he can turn this into more of a spread offense, I think this could work out perfectly. But in terms of hoping for him to achieve, as long as he's able to evolve the offense and maximize the talent we have on the roster, I'm fine with it. But yeah, let's actually get into some of his stats here because I actually got that here for the most part. So I actually went out and decided to take a look at some of his stats during his time, both in the NFL and then his recent time in Georgia. So this starts off with 2007. One thing you have to know about Todd Monken is that in terms of the pros, he started off as a quarterbacks coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars from 2007 to 2010. Now, if we know a thing or two about the Jacksonville Jaguars, you would understand that they weren't exactly a great team. They did have one great year, and that great year was 2007, where they actually were 11-5 that year. So credit to them, they were 11-5, and they actually won a playoff game. So yeah, 2007. He was the wide receiver coach. So he wasn't the offensive coordinator, but he was the wide receiver coach. If you want to take a look at how that offense was in terms of total yards, it was ranked 7th in the league. In terms of passing yards, it was ranked 17th in the league. So again, he wasn't the play caller, but he was helping the receivers. And if you take a look at the production from the receivers, it's MJD. I'd love to see him, I guess. But if you take a look at the receiving corps, they didn't have the best of talent on the receiving corps. But, you utilize whoever you could utilize. Dennis Northcutt had 44 catches, 600 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. Reggie Williams was the most successful out of all of them. 38 catches, 629 yards, 10 touchdowns. You're getting Ernest Wilford, 45 catches, 518 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then it kind of goes down from here. So in 07, this was easily the most success the Jaguars had during his time being a wide receiving coach. And you saw that he was able to get some really solid production from a receiving corps that wasn't exactly the most talented. So, but this is his early stint, so obviously you're going to see he's going to continue to improve. Then you get to 2018. Obviously, the team is worse. Offensive ranking is 20. They're 11th in passing this time, so it's interesting. You go and look at how the receiving corps was performing during this time, and you would see who would be his most successful. Again, you'd probably have to actually, they do take a step back here for the most part. You're looking at some of the other guys. Reggie Williams actually had 37 catches, 364 yards, 3 touchdowns. His most successful receiver, Matt Jones, 65 catches, 761 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. So they weren't really scoring like that, but they were putting up a lot of yards. And again, I mean, you didn't have a great quarterback. You had David Garrard as your quarterback, so that's not exactly the best thing to look at for the most part. Either way, seeing throughout that time, he was able to get something here again in 2009. They weren't great. Offensive ranking and total yards, 18, 23 in passing. So they continued to take a step back. They weren't exactly the best. In terms of their receiving core, Mike Sims here with 63 catches, 869 yards, 7 touchdowns. Torrey Holt, 51 catches, 722 yards, no touchdowns here, which is kind of crazy. And then you go look at it, you're gonna still see other guys trying to put up production, but there's not much to look at here in the receiving corps. Again, 2010, not a good team, not a lot of talent. In terms of ranking, 15th in total yards, 27 in passing yards. So they just got worse and worse. But again, he's not the offensive coordinator, so he's not calling plays. It's just about developing the receivers. And if you're looking at the production of the receivers, they don't really fall off here. This was the best receiver this year, Mercedes Lewis, 58 catches, 700 yards, 10 touchdowns. You're still seeing Mike Sims get involved. He had 7 touchdowns, 562 receiving yards. And from that point on, there's not much to really look at here. Do you think he can put us over the hump when it comes to the playoffs? Again, the playoffs isn't just about the offense. It's about the D. It's not just about the offense. The play calling has to play into it. Personnel has to play into it. Defense itself has. There's a bunch of things that have to come together for the most part. Your home guy, Raven C, is very upset about this move. Watch your video to gain your perspective. And why the hell do the Ravens always got to pick outside the box? Okay, first of all, Raven C was initially, by the way, what's up, man? But Raven C was initially, he was initially upset with the pick because we all want to be enemy. But after he took a look at it, he was like, okay, I'm not upset anymore. I am skeptical. We'll see how things go. So he's not exactly upset anymore, but he is like, okay, let's be very cautious with it. So yeah, during his 4 years in Jacksonville from 2007 to 2010, the receiving core was productive. Wasn't the best in the league, but it was productive. And it wasn't a talented roster, and they were not a good team, and they didn't have a great quarterback, so it is what it is. Now let's fast forward to 2016. This is his first time being an offensive coordinator. This time he's on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. During the 2016 season, they were 9-7 that year. So obviously they didn't make the playoffs, but they were 9-7. They had Jameis Winston as their quarterback. And understand that when you have Jameis Winston as your quarterback, you're going to have the ball being turned over a lot. So it's hard to really blame the turnovers on him. But we got to look at the ranking for the total yards and the passing yards. 2016, the first year he was there as the offensive coordinator and the wide receiving coach. Because remember, 2016, or I don't know if you knew about this, but 2016 and 2017, he was Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator and wide receiver coach. So he developed the wide receiving room, and he was the primary play caller throughout this time. And if you take a look at their offensive ranking during that time, they ranked 18th in total yards with 5,542. And in terms of passing, they ranked 16th. That's not actually bad. They actually took a step back here in rushing. They were ranked 24th in rushing. They actually were not a great rushing team. Now, I've said this 1,000 times. In terms of the Buccaneers, why they failed in this era came down to 2 things. One, the constant turnovers from Jameis Winston, and 2, and most importantly, their defense was terrible. You can see right here, total yardage is terrible here. They're ranked 23rd, and it gets worse, as you would see. So offensively, they're ranked 18th in total yards, 16th in passing yards, and of course, once he got talent, he was able to maximize it. One thing I'll say about Todd is he's able to maximize the talent at receivers. He comes here, and who does he have? Obviously, Mike Evans. Mike Evans, 96 catches, 1,321 yards, 12 touchdowns. He's able to maximize the talent there. He also has Adam Humphries, 55 catches, 622 yards, 2 touchdowns. But he's able to maximize the talent he's given here for the most part. Mike Evans was that talent that he was able to maximize, and under this offense, he was able to thrive a lot. One thing you got to know about Todd Monken is that he's more of a passing guru than a running expert. He leans more on the side of the air raid as opposed to a high-octane running game. So that's kind of where his spectrum is at the end of the day. So obviously you saw Mike Evans was able to put up great numbers in his system, and it was able to be relatively effective as to why they did well. But it does get better. This is only 2016. Now, of course, I mean, this was Jameis Winston's year. He was able to put up 4,000 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, 18 interceptions. But in 2016, the offense wasn't bad. It was actually middle of the pack. So that's good to see. It improves in 2017. So you saw in 2016, they were ranked 18th in total offense, and they were ranked 16th in passing yards. They go from that to making a dramatic improvement. In 2017, they ranked 19th, they ranked 9th, They ranked 9th in total yards of offense, and they ranked 4th in passing yards that season. That is a huge jump. You see a 5,814 yards and then 4,366 passing yards. So they took a huge step in the passing aspect. What held them back? Jameis Winston with the turnovers. By the way, Ryan Fitzpatrick was on the team by 2017. But Jameis Winston with the turnovers, 19 touchdowns to 11 picks. And, of course, them having the worst defense in football. Ranked 32, last place in yards given. So a bad defense and a quarterback that's turning the ball over led to their demise. However, when you see how he is in the passing game, they take a massive jump. Now, in the rushing yards, this is to keep in mind. In the rushing yards, it's ranked 27th. However, they didn't really have the running game wasn't really prominent for them during that time. And it's not like they had the greatest of running backs to utilize during this time. So talent wasn't there. Him in Baltimore, he's going to have J.K. Dobbins. He's going to have Gus Edwards. Hopefully, he's going to have Kenyon Drake. He's going to have good running backs here. So hopefully, he will be able to maximize it. And you'll see what I mean when we get to his time in Georgia, because he was able to create somewhat of a balanced offense there. But as you see in 2017, they go from 18th and 18 and 16 to 9 and 3 in terms of rankings of total yards and passing yards. Now we get into 2018, and things continue to improve. So you saw in 2017, they were ranked 9th in total yards and 4th in passing yards. In 2018, they were ranked 3rd in total yards with 6,648, and they were the best passing offense in football in 2018. Over 5,000 passing yards, 5,125. Again, Jameis Winston played, but he didn't play well. Ryan Fitzpatrick also played in the system because this year Jameis played 9 games. Ryan Fitzpatrick played 7 games. Both of them weren't great. 19 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 17 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. But man, did they put up a lot of yards. And again, their defense is ranked 27. So you're seeing the improvement. The passing game got better, got better, got better. Throughout the 3 years he was in Tampa Bay, the passing game got better. The only reason why they weren't winning games has to do with the quarterback constantly turning the ball over in Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick when he played, and the defense being bad. In Baltimore, he's going to have Lamar Jackson, one of the best quarterbacks in the game, and he's going to have arguably a top 10 defense when they play up to their potential. So I expect this offense to be able to be a huge improvement from what it was before. If he's able to do this with Jameis Winston, and in 3 years turn that offense from ranked 18th and 16th to being ranked 3rd in total yards and the number one passing offense in the game. He did that with Jameis Winston. If we're able to do that in terms of total yardages, that is going to be a bonus. Another thing to also talk about is they were ranked third in touchdowns that year. They were ranked third in passing touchdowns. So you saw, I didn't even talk about that, 2017 passing touchdowns, they were ranked 10, and 2016 passing touchdowns, they were ranked 8. So their offense is really good at putting up yards. Under Todd Monken, the offense is good at putting up yards, and it's good at putting up points on the board. They score touchdowns. So you have to sit back and say, okay, this guy has had success. It wasn't his fault that defense was terrible. His offense was able to do much, and he had a quarterback that wasn't exactly the most balanced, because that man continued to turn the ball over. So in his 3 years there in Tampa Bay, he was able to turn that offense into something special. It was unfortunate that Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick kept turning the ball over, but damn, did they put up a lot of yards. So that's definitely a bonus to look at. And in terms of NFL experience, when he was with Tampa Bay, he helped improve the offense from 18 and 16 to number 3 in total yards and number 1 in passing yards. And they were always within the top 10 in touchdowns, in passing touchdowns. So that has to be vital. The only downside here is the rushing game hasn't been the best under him. But at the same time, the talent in the running game and the offensive line of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was not great. You can only work with the talent you have. There's only so much an offensive coordinator can do. But he was able to maximize the receiving talent. And again, I mentioned in I don't know if I showed that for 2017 for Mike Williams. Mike Williams in 2017, 71 catches, 1,001 yards, and had 5 touchdowns. It was a little bit of a downside here, but the reason why it was a bit of a downside was because they had other guys. You had Deshaun Jackson, 50 catches, 668 yards, 3 touchdowns. You also had the addition of Chris Godwin, 34 catches, 525 yards, and he had a touchdown here. So you had other guys here. You were utilizing the tight ends like O.J. Howard. So other weapons started to show up on this team around 2017, which kind of took away from Mike Evans, but was able to help spread around the ball to other weapons, which definitely helps out from how it was in 2016. Then in 2018, when you saw this offense, you look at how the receivers were able to perform, and you'll see Mike Evans, 86 catches, 1,524 yards, 8 touchdowns. Chris Godwin, 59 catches, 842 yards, 7 touchdowns. You're looking at O.J. Howard with 565 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. You were able to see some other things. Deshaun Jackson, 41 catches, 774 yards, 4 touchdowns. When you give him weapons to utilize, he maximizes the talent there. So this guy at least knows what he's doing when it comes to the passing aspect. The running aspect's a bit different because, again, the talent in Tampa Bay wasn't the best. But still, he is definitely going to be an improvement in the passing game. Now, of course, we do have to address one aspect. Here when it comes to his time as an offensive coordinator. And that was his time in Cleveland. Now, again, I've heard from, on one hand, the offense in Cleveland did not play well that year. But on the other hand, I've heard from several individuals, including Brown fans, that said Todd Monken wasn't really involved in the offense. Even though he was offensive coordinator, he wasn't involved. That right there was Freddie Kitchen's system. Freddie Kitchen wanted to run it, so he was the primary play caller. I'm not exactly sure what Todd Monken did on this team. But he was written here as the offensive coordinator. So this is the Freddie Kitchen system, and Freddie Kitchen was the one that was calling the plays. So I wouldn't look too much into this, but hey, it is on his resume. During his time with Cleveland, the offense was ranked 22 in total yards and ranked 22 in passing yards. Again, he was not the primary play caller. That was Freddie Kitchens. This was his offense. He chose to run it however he wanted to run it. This was also the year Baker Mayfield chose to throw 21 interceptions. That's not good. This was also, I believe, the highest amount of passing yards he's ever thrown in his career to this day. So at least he helped out with that. Turnovers were more on Baker's aspect, but that's a different situation. In terms of the receiving game, you had Odell this year. 74 catches, 1,035 yards, 4 touchdowns. Jarvis Landry having one of the best years, if not the best year of his career. 83 catches, 1,174 yards, and 6 touchdowns. So those were your two main guys to eat. Other than that, there was not much really to show there, and there was some tough moments. Now, his time in Cleveland doesn't look great, but he's also not the one that's specifically responsible for how Cleveland went. That was more so Freddie Kitchens, because that was his offense, that was his system, and he was really the primary play caller. So I guess like Monken didn't really do much there. What's going on, Louise? What's going on, Ronnie? So yeah, that's pretty much how he was as a coach during his time in the NFL. From 2007 to 2010, he was the quarterback coach of Jacksonville and was able to get some pretty good production out of a receiving corps that wasn't the best. From 2016 to 2018, he was the offensive coordinator with the Bucs, and they skyrocketed. They went from being ranked 18th in total yards in 2016 to being ranked 3rd in total yards. And then they went from being ranked 16 in passing yards to being ranked number 1 in passing yards. And I already showed all the stats. You guys saw the production there. So he really turned that offense around. And in terms of passing touchdowns, they were within the top 10. So obviously you can see that Monken has been highly successful. And he was doing that with Jameis Winston, who was a bona fide turnover machine. He was doing that with Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick, because Ryan Fitzpatrick was playing in 2018. So you see that his time in the NFL, he was effective when it came to the passing game. Running game wasn't, not so much, but at the same time, there wasn't really any good talent there in the running core. And again, Tampa Bay's offensive line was terrible. Their offensive line was terrible. The running game couldn't get going because of that offensive line. Jameis Winston couldn't stop turning the ball over, and they had one of the worst defenses in football the 3 years he was there. So that's kind of how it was. Now let's get into his time in Georgia. So after he leaves that job for being in Cleveland for 1 year, not really doing anything because it was for the kitchen system, he goes to Georgia here, and during his time in Georgia, you could see a change. Obviously, that first year they were 12-2. They didn't win a national championship that year, but in terms of the offense, you're going to see a change that he does. First year there as the offensive coordinator, they end up averaging 223 passing yards and 186 rushing yards. That leads to a total of about 409 yards on offense. That's pretty good. That is pretty good given the circumstances. Him being there the first year. Obviously, they won a national championship at that time. But, yeah, that was his first year there. And he had Jake Fromm as his primary quarterback there. But you'll see, that first year, there wasn't much to really look at there. In terms of receiving, he did have George Pickens. I didn't realize that. I actually forgot George Pickens was actually in Georgia. So, yeah, he had George Pickens during that time. 49 catches, 727 yards, 8 touchdowns. And we know how much of a talent that George Pickens is. So, he's shown he's able to work with any sort of talent, which really, makes me happy, because we have a guy in Rashad Bateman that I would love to see improvement with. And I believe Monken could help out with that. So, you see that first year, 223 passing yards, 186 rushing yards, 409 total yards that first year. They don't win a national title. Actually, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This is actually the offense, how they looked a year before he got there. My mistake. So, yeah, 223. This is 2019. This is not 2020. My mistake. 2019. Before he got there, they had 223 passing yards, 186 rushing yards. That's what they were. His first year getting there, they go from 223 passing yards to 250 passing yards. Now, the rushing yards does drop from 186 to 174. However, you'll see a change happen because, again, every year an improvement is made with him as the offensive coordinator. So the passing game improves, and total yards is improved from 409 to 424 from what it was during 2019. So you see what happens here. And, of course, George Pickens, not much to say here in terms of yards. Touchdowns about the same. But this is now when Stetson's now the quarterback for him during that time. So that was that first year there. Obviously, didn't win a national championship at that time, but things would turn around. Getting into the 2021 season, you're going to see a dramatic increase. So, in 2021, they were about 249 and 174. Now you and 424 of yards of total offense. Now in 2021, this is the time they won that first national championship. The record was 14-1. They would go on to beat Alabama, obviously, in the national championship. Offensively, they went from 240, what was it, 249? They went from 240, basically 250, to about 252. So an increase of about 2 yardages here. So it's not that much. However, like we said with the running game, it was going to make a dramatic increase. The running game went from 174 to 191, meaning the total yardage of offense went from 424 to 443 during that time. And this is, of course, Stetson at that time being the quarterback for them. They win that national title. And, yeah, obviously he still had James Cook as one of his main backs. 13 carries, 728 rushing yards, and 7 touchdowns. He was also utilized in the passing game because one thing that I'll get into later on when it comes to Todd Monken is his philosophy on offense. Because his philosophy on offense is a big part of what drew the Ravens to pick him at the end of the day. So, yeah, you saw last year what he was able to do. And, of course, he was able to maximize some of the talent here. It was more well-balanced. No one really stuck out in the offense when it came to the receiving game. I guess if you want to look at McConney, who had 882 yards, but it was a well-balanced offense. So you saw the